polygon, an ellipse. We'll also be covering the mirror command, the rotate command, and creating a polar and rectangular arrays. Let's first talk about our polyline. Excuse me. A polyline is just one continuous line for one object. So like if I came in here and created this individual lines here, this is not a one segment, it's one continual polyline, one continual line, even though it's on different coordinates, you know, X, Y, Z, or X, Y coordinates here. It's different than coming up here and creating a line where you can create a similar shape. Whoops. There we go. But here we have individual lines. So the advantage of having a polyline, we're actually going to talk about some additional commands. Oh, I also forgot we're going to cover the offset command, but it allows you to create one segmented line. So if you needed to edit this line or copy this line, you'd only have to, or excuse me, polyline, you'd only have to select one item to be able to copy, move, rotate, mirror, all of these items that we're going to cover today. But if you have an object that is individual segments and you realize, oh, hey, look, I'd like to have this as a polyline, you can actually come up to modify and go down to join. It looks like the two arrows facing each other. And then you just select your items that you want to join. And we'll just put a big blue box around them, select enter. And now these are an individual polyline. The other advantage for this is if you're creating what's called a DXF file that you would take to something like a plasma cutter or a laser cutter or something of that nature, engraver, this creates one continuous line for the engraver or whatever you're doing to create versus individual segments. So just keep that in mind. Now, let's say you had these polylines together and you realize, you know what, I don't really want these as a polyline. You can also have them selected and go above right here to the modify, right below our erase and select explode. And when you do that, it now creates each individual segmented line again. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to what's called a polygon. So right underneath our rectangular command, we have polygon. And polygon, you just select it and you're going to choose the number of sides. So let's say 6 sides, for example. And we want to select the center point. So we're just going to select somewhere here on our screen. Now here's the difficult part is inscribed versus circumscribed. So I'm going to do inscribed first. And I want you to notice that it is to the points. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm actually going to put a circle in here right in the middle. Oops, I chose diameter, I should have chose radius. There we go. So an inscribed means the polygon is inside this circle. So you'd be given a measurement from point to point. A circumscribed, again, there's our 6 sides, hit enter. We're specifying the center here. A circumscribed means, notice how it's grabbed at the flat side, is that it goes around your circle there. So that's a circumscribed polygon. So if you were given a measurement from flat to flat, you would use circumscribed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and erase these real quick. The next thing we're going to look at is the offset command. Here's our offset command right here. What offset allows you to do is to create parallel, actually really not parallel, but it could be parallel lines or circles that are the same distance or that are explode, or actually I guess offset. It's hard to describe without actually using the word offset. Offset a certain distance. So for example, if this was specify my offset, let's say a 1/2 inch here, and I select my polygon, I can select to the outside. And if I come over here and I do a quick measurement from my midpoint here to, let's say, the midpoint here, that's 1/2 inch. So it allows you to offset a drawn figure, whatever distance you give it. So for example, our polygon here, I can select, of course, set my offset distance. You always have to set that first. Hit enter, and notice the whole polygon is offset. If I come up here and select my individual lines, notice those individual lines are what are offset here. Offset's a very fun command to use. All right. Another item, we're going to go ahead and erase some of these items here. We're going to take a look at is the mirror command. So I'm going to select mirror, and it's going to ask you what objects do you want to mirror. So let's say I wanted to have this object right below here. And if you want to think about it, imagine if you had a piece of paper and you folded that piece of paper in half and opened it back up. That fold line will be your mirror line. And let's say you took some red paint and put a splotch of red paint on one side, and then you folded that back over folded the paper back together and opened it back up. That mirror line, whatever you put on that red blob, would be the exact same on the other side. Okay, so that's basically you're mirroring what you're doing. So the first thing it asks you to do is select your objects. I can select one object, I can select multiple objects. Let's go ahead and do both of them. The next thing it's going to do is tell you to select enter, because there's nothing else that you want to modify or that you want to add. So here's where it makes a difference of where you create your line. So this would be your fold line. So if I click here and drag my cursor to the right, that's my fold. So I would have this piece here. Notice it asks, do you want to erase your original? Let's say no. So let's go ahead and do this again. Let's do our mirror command. Select both our objects. I'm going to hit enter. Now, instead of using in between here, I'm going to do this vertical line. And again, this would be my fold line. So as you see that little green dash there, that would be as if I'm looking at my piece of paper. I stamped these two on one side. Now I'm folding it over and stamping it on the other side. So that is my mirror command. What I also have is what's called, we don't want to get rid of it, is my, let's go ahead and just select over here, is a rotate. So I can rotate an object. So again, as soon as you select rotate, you have to select your object. And then you want to select your select enter, because there's nothing else you want to rotate unless there's multiple items. And it wants to do your base point. So if I chose the midpoint as my base point, that's the point that it's rotating around. Okay, so I can rotate it to whatever degree I want. I can select rotate. I could also, again, select my object, hit enter. I'm going to select the base point here, the end point, and now it's rotating around that end point. So it's already here. Let's say I want it to go, I don't know, 45 degrees. I can type in 45 degrees. And now that line rotated from here 45 degrees. Because remember, we're going counterclockwise. And where I'm selecting is my base point. So it's going to rotate that line 45 degrees. All right, let's see what else we have. We have mirror done, rotate, offset. Now let's talk about an ellipse. I'm going to slide this over here. And our ellipse command is right underneath our polygon and rectangular command. We have two different options. We can do the center of our ellipse, where we go from the center. Let's try that one first, where we're selecting the center of our ellipse. And then we're selecting our first axis and our second axis. That's from the center point. That's if you know the center and your measurement here. Or you can also do end, which means you know from one end to the other end. And then you know that if you want to, it's not really a radius, but it's a length line for the other part of our ellipse. And that's how you create an ellipse. And the last thing that we're going to take a look at is our array. So let's go ahead and I'm actually going to delete some of this stuff here. Not everything, we're going to keep our polygon. Let's go up here to erase. And I'm going to move my polygon. Let's just move it up here. And I'm going to select and I'm just going to create a circle. Let's select, let's make sure we're right in the midpoint here. So let's say I have this circle created here. And I wanted to rotate this item that I created around the circle here. Well, that's called a polar array. So we're going to come up here to array, do our drop down menu. And notice the first thing I see is polar array. So I'm going to go ahead and select polar array. And first thing it tells you to do, again, just like always with a modify, is select your objects. So let's say I select both of them here and I select enter because I don't want to rotate anything else. It's going to ask me for the center point. Now you'll see why I put the circle here, because this is the center that's going to be rotated around. Notice we have an array creation tab that is created. And the first thing that we are going to look at is the number of items. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items. We could put, let's put 10 items. And when I click off of it, There's your 10 items. If you don't know the number of items, you could also select it by putting the measurement between your items. That would be if I drew a line from here up to here and a line from here over to here, that would be a 36-degree measurement between the two centers. I can call it, leave it as associative, which means these will all stay together and relative together, and I can edit them together. I can also change the rotation of my items, of how I want it rotated. So if I do rotate items, I should have chosen a different object here. Well, yeah, you can see it a little bit here. If I have rotate items selected, it'll rotate this object around the circle. If I deselect it, notice that it stays where the flat is, just as if I duplicated it. So let's do it one more time. So see how it's rotating around. This is actually rotating around the circle. I can change the direction. So now the direction's going to the right instead of towards the left. Why does that make a difference? Well, right now I have it filling 360 degrees. If I selected 80 or 180, it's going to rotate this way 180 degrees and fit 10 of them in there. I can change the direction by just selecting this item, and then I can close the array. So let's say I came in here, notice when I click one, you'll see that all of them are highlighted. Okay, you'll see that the entire array is highlighted. Okay, do that one more time. Entire is rotated. I can edit my source, so I can take this here and I can edit my associative object here. So remember, I left it as associated. I can replace an item, so I can come in here and remove an item here. And I can reset my array back to the original setting. So anything that I change, I'm gonna go ahead and put this back to 360 degrees. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close my array, and that's a polar array. I'm gonna go in here and let's erase everything. Now notice when I select this and I hit erase and I only selected one item, it erases everything because I left it as associative. So if you did not want this associative, you can actually just very easily select your explode and select your objects and hit enter. And now notice how each one is its individual item. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of my array except my original and erase it. Oops, missed one. Now I'm going to come up here and do a rectangular array. Again, same thing. Wants me to select my objects and hit enter. And notice as soon as I do this, the array creation comes back. This time I'm going to show you what happens if I take the associative off. Notice I can set the number of columns and the number of rows. So we have 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3 rows, 1, 2, and 3. I could set the distance between them. I can set the total length from one side to the other. So if I came in here and said, I don't want it 0.6, I want it, let's make it 5 so it's noticeable. Notice the adjustments in my rows. I can also do that. Let's make this 5 for my columns as well. Notice that they're now smaller. Distance in between. I can take the associative off. And I'm going to go ahead and close my array. So now when I come in here, notice, unlike when I was showing the polar array where it was still associative, these are now already individual items. So if you had items that you wanted to delete, but you wanted to keep the rest of the pattern, this is a quick and easy way to do it, is not to make it associative. Now the issue is if you come in and edit your polygon, for example, it's not going to edit everything else because it's not associative to it. It's not basically attached to that original. All right, that covers these new commands.